They say Africa has no history, yet their museums are full of African treasures. If Africa had no history, why is the evidence locked behind European glass? They say Africa has no history, that it is a dark continent with no legacy, no civilization, no story worth telling. But how do you explain the Benin Bronzes in London, the gold of Mapungubwe in British archives, the Nubian artifacts in Boston, or the hundreds of thousands of stolen African treasures sitting in European museums? Africa does have a history, a glorious one, but it was stolen, silenced, and stored in Western vaults. Today we dig it up, piece by piece. Welcome to AfriFacts. Part 1, The Lie. Africa has no history. When British historian Hugh Trevor Roper infamously declared in 1963 that there is only the history of Europeans in Africa, the rest is darkness, he was echoing a colonial mindset that Africa's past was irrelevant. But let's ask one critical question. Why are European museums full of African artifacts if Africa had no civilization worth remembering? The truth is, this lie was carefully crafted. Erasing Africa's past made it easier to justify the slave trade, colonization, and cultural domination. It wasn't just about land, it was about memory. To colonize Africa, they first had to colonize its past. Part 2, What was stolen? Voisu. Let's name names. Let's talk about what was stolen. 1. The Benin Bronzes. In 1897, British forces invaded the Kingdom of Benin in modern-day Nigeria. They looted over 4,000 intricate bronze, ivory, and wooden artifacts created by master craftsmen over centuries. These are not tribal trinkets. They are historical archives in metal telling the story of kings, warriors, and gods. Today, they sit in the British Museum, the Louvre, and museums across Germany and the US. 2. The Rosetta Stone and Nubian art. Egypt's history is African history, yet Western scholars tried to separate Egyptian greatness from Black Africa. The Rosetta Stone is in the British Museum, and hundreds of Nubian treasures belonging to the Black Pharaohs of Kush sit in American museums. Why isn't this African history taught in African schools? 3. The Golden Rhino of Mapungubwe. Found in South Africa in 1932, this small artifact proves that Black Africans were trading gold with Asia and the Middle East in the 11th century. But instead of celebrating it, South Africa's apartheid regime kept it hidden until 1999. History is not just what happened, it's what they choose to tell. According to a 2018 report commissioned by the French government, over 90% of Africa's cultural heritage is held outside the continent. Here are some of the biggest hoarders. British Museum, UK, over 73,000 African items, refuses to return the Benin Bronzes. Musée du Quai Branly, France, holds over 70,000 artifacts from sub-Saharan Africa. Humboldt Forum recently loaned back stolen Benin artifacts to Nigeria. Imagine this. They steal your heritage, display it for profit, and then lend it back to you, like they're doing you a favor. That's modern colonialism. The Part 4, The Fight for Return. Africans are no longer silent. From Nigeria to Ethiopia, the call for repatriation is growing louder. Nigeria, demanding return of Benin Bronzes, built the Edo Museum of West African Art to house them. Ethiopia has demanded return of treasures looted after the Battle of Magdala in 1868. Senegal opened the Museum of Black Civilizations in Dakar in 2018, one of the largest and most ambitious museums in Africa. But here's the challenge. Many Western museums hide behind legal technicalities, saying, these artifacts are part of World Heritage now. But if the world wants to share Africa's heritage, why not share it on African soil? Why this matters when it matters. This is not just about objects. It's about identity. It's about what African children learn about themselves. When African artifacts are locked away in Paris and London, it tells African youth that their past is not valuable unless approved by foreigners. that they must travel to Europe to see the greatness of their ancestors. And that is a lie. History is not neutral. It shapes how we see ourselves. It shapes what we believe we can become. Part 6, Call to Action, Chuzian. So what can we do? 1. Demand the return. Speak up. Write, tweet, support petitions for the return of stolen African artifacts. 2. Support African museums. Visit them. Donate. Promote them. Let's make museums in Africa places of pride and learning. 3. Reclaim our narrative. Use your voice, your art, your writing, your music to tell Africa's story the way it was meant to be told. Don't wait for Europe to approve your history. Final statement. They say Africa has no history, but the truth is, they feared our history. So they stole it. They feared our power, so they erased it, but no more. This generation will rise, not just to remember Africa's past, but to rebuild Africa's future. Subscribe to AfriFacts, share our truth, reclaim our story.